Hi everyone, I'm Emre. I'm an AI deployment engineer at OpenAI. My role is basically working with OpenAI customers to build AI agents, AI use cases using our models. I work with good variety of customers. I work with financial institutions, large enterprises, medium-sized enterprises, and digital natives. So today I'll talk about financial intent in autonomous financial agents and loops. We have 4 different topics today. So I'll talk about long-running agents and how an agent can work autonomously. I'll talk about harness engineering, which is a new keyword that we hear more and more every day when building AI agents. We have loop engineering, which is even like next level keyword, I think, after harness engineering. And then like specific financial case that I'll go through today. Yes, so as of today in 2026, agents are doing longer and longer tasks, right? So agents will run for longer and longer because models are getting better and better. And also harness around the models and all the systems that we're building is also getting better and better and are more capable with the models. So this is an old chart. I think it was right after 5.2, but now we have 5.3, 5.5. We have anthropic models, like Sonnet and Opus. But long story short here is we see no wall in terms of models completing longer and longer tasks. So this one is specifically for software tasks, but I think we can extrapolate it to financial task, a typical knowledge work that agent can work around in an artifact and deploy or generate an output. I want to start with harness and harness engineering here. So harness is basically an architecture or different components that touches to the model. So we can count everything around the model as piece of the harness. So we have some tools here. We have evals, compaction, memory, state, and sandbox management. So these are all specific components that basically allows your model to run longer and longer. The harness actually owns some capability envelope, as you can see. There's credentials and policy. There's state management, task management, some approvals, interruption, and everything. So if you're using a coding agent today, like Codex or Cloud Code, so all of these components are there. So this is basically what's allowing your agent to run longer and longer. If you want to pause your agent, continue later. If you want agent to remember what your preference are, what you liked, what you didn't like, and it can do compaction and longer and longer with all of these harness capabilities and components. I think this is a nice slide to basically summarize what we are going to talk in the future. So everything starts with prompt engineering, maybe 2-3 years ago when large language models basically released from AI labs like OpenAI, Anthropic, and DeepMind. It was basically shaping one interaction. So we were thinking about like what should we put in this prompt to get the best output in a single LLM call and interaction. And then the next step was context engineering. Models were getting better and better, and we noticed that context is everything. Context is the king. And then we were thinking about like what will be the best way to shape the context to get the next best output from the model. And as of this year, we are also realizing that the harness engineering is also an important discipline in building AI agents, especially for financial agents too. That means that you have to design everything around the model. You have to put some memory primitives for agent to remember and forget. You have to use some compaction because context window is limited in AI agents. You can add some sandboxes or file system that an agent can see, update, and edit different files and search through the folder system. So these are really different primitives and components that we use in the harness engineering. And I think the next natural progression of all of these concepts is loop engineering. So what it means is basically now we have models that are like really capable and smart. We have context engineering techniques, how to shape the context. We have harness engineering and new primitives that models basically like getting better and better and also post-trained on it. And the next discipline becomes loop engineering. So it means how we can design loops so that an agent can work iteratively and stop sometimes and ask for a human judgment and continue again and work in an efficient way to solve like one specific problem. So as you see, human judgment is an important step in loops. So today, if you're building an app or coding, your agent stops and asks you questions, right? It asks your judgment. But sometimes the agent can also continue and use its own judgment. I think this becomes really important to finding the right balance, like when the model should use its own judgment and when it should stop the loop and ask, hey, should I continue? Should I stop? Should I change anything? And of course, in the middle, you see an artifact. Because a knowledge work usually generates an output, and it's oftentimes is an artifact. It can be a document, it can be code, it can be a research report, it can be a decision strategy. I think this really explains well like why loop engineering is going to be more and more important, and how we can build better loops. This is more zoomed in version, so you see different steps in a specific loop. So usually a knowledge work is basically starts with drafting something. Sometimes we edit, critique, refine, we verify, and then we repeat this loop again and again. So this is also a nice zoomed in version, like what's going on in one specific loop. Okay, and then, yeah, loop engineering is a design of many different dimensions, and it's basically a trade-off, like in a typical engineering problem. So we have our budgets. I don't know if you heard token maxing these days. We should have some budgets basically when we're building an AI loop. It can be some tokens, it can be some turns, or it can be like a cost in terms of money. Clocks, like when must the loop pause or expire? This is an important decision to build a loop. And then gates, when should the agent stop? And recovery, if there is something wrong, if agent can make like a wrong decision or hallucinates a little bit, can it recover in the next turns in that specific loop? Those are 4 different dimensions, basically think about different loops in financial systems. And then if we tie everything together in a specific finance agent, yeah, the control plane for autonomous agents is basically the financial intent. So here you see 2 different loops. So one of them is probabilistic reasoning loop. The other one is also deterministic financial loop. And what connects these 2 loops together is the authorization gate and some policies. So in finance, we have deterministic steps and gate. And also we have probabilistic machines or non-deterministic machines, which are the large language models. And the art and science is basically just combining these 2 loops together and using some authorization gates and human judgment going forward. If we more dive into that specific financial use case, so yeah, when in the moment an agent can move value, it becomes an economic actor. So you see like a typical flow here. So there is a reasoning loop, like in answer generation and deciding the preference. But when there's a specific commit, it becomes the loop changed the ledger after that specific threshold, and it becomes more solid on, like, it will be responsible for its actions. So this specific step in this timeline really defines like different type of loops in building financial agents. And I wanted that one procurement use case here. So I think it's a good summarization or explanation of a long-running agent in finance. So here, long-running means basically if you wait for some responses, some events, that can also mean long-running, but long-running agent also can be like an agent always running until it reaches to its own goal. So whenever you hear this definition, it can mean both of things. So because sometimes it might be understood as like if an agent can work for hours and days, but usually financial tasks that take some days and weeks requires some wait time, right? So you have to pause, you have to wait and see the response of the action, and then you can continue. So it really aligns well with like typical coding agent behavior with pause and play and resumability. Here we see the two timelines. One of them is the evidence ledger, which is continuous. So we are saving task state, code set, policy decisions, approvals, and receipt. And the first timeline is basically the timeline of an financial AI agent. So you see different steps, goal received. We have supplier codes collected, policy checks, terms negotiated, and if it's needed, the agent is stopping at some point and basically doing a human escalation and asking if there is an ambiguous situation, what should be the next step, if human should basically guide and steer the model in the right direction. And then finally, there's a closed action bound and payment authorization and receipt reconcile. So this is a typical timeline for a procurement agent that I can say. But the important point is that there are many different events, right? So sometimes agent is taking an action with a tool. Sometimes it's waiting for your approval. It's listening different type of events, and its context is basically it consists of many different type of components. So it can be some decisions, it can be some documents, policy checks, tool call outputs, inputs, maybe memory. I think this also shows us like how the context is evolving over time in a specific procurement agent in finance. Of course, the second timeline is pretty important too because it's a continuous ledger that will keep all the evidences in a specific finance agent. Okay, thank you very much for listening. I know it was fast. Can we do some Q&A or? Yeah. Yeah, so you mean these checks more like human checks or agent, like, or system? Yeah, so there are a couple ways to do it. So I think the first one is you should use the resumability of the agent itself just to wait and listen, like that's additional check from the external resources. So if it's basically like a systematic check, you can use agent-to-agent protocols and basically get that decision from that external agent or external system with some tools. Or you can basically wait and stop the context and reach out to that specific actor and get their approval and responses and inject it back into the context again. So these are some techniques that you can apply, but the system prompt and agent should know that these are some external checks, and it should know like when to stop and wait for these type of checks and perform like get the decision and continue based on that. So there, in system prompts, there are different ways to instruct that to the agent. And when it's instructed, I think agent can stop and wait and get the decision from the external systems in a different ways.
Oh, here we go. When you have an agent touch money and execute transactions in a enterprise setting, what is the process to go from, you know, it's being an idea to it being a pilot to like it actually running in production, right? Because there's a large amount of trust to give an agentic workflow access to money. So I'm just curious, like, how do you work with clients to basically build that trust internally and like work from small to big?
Yeah, so this is still very sensitive decision in financial institutions. So I can't say like agents can fully use its judgment when there is a decision that's touching the money. So the companies are really still very, very sensitive on that. But we're using basically model intelligence and model judgment for some minor auto approval type of checks, and basically just leaving the final decision to a human or an institution to go forward. So imagine you're coding and you're using the auto approval check basically. So that means the model is doing all these different checks, different reasoning, and basically showing you like what would be the risks. But of course, the final decision should be in a human and financial institution. But I think models getting better and better in terms of using their judgment. So probably in the future, I think we'll see more and more easier decisions will be done by machines or large language models. But right now, there's still like escalation or human in the loop type of processes when it touches the money.